I think this is like a question that is directed back to us. Like, how are we feeling today? Whether we are depressed financially or we are happy financially, right?
So let's take a look at who are millennials to answer Chanel's question. Talking about millennials, right? So there's a the one that bonds, between the year of 1981 to 1996, they call themselves the millennials, these adults are actually came of age during the dawn of the 21st century, which is the 1990s and the new millennials. That's why we are called the millennials. And IT, information technology, and we are the first batch of the so-called firstborn, first to be born into the digital world. Members of this group are considered digital natives. So we are considered as the native Chanel, also known as we are also known as the Generation Y as well, the millennials. Generation X is our parents. In the research, it says that we are the people of millennials are the most uncertain economic future, facing the most uncertain economic future of any generation before us since the Great Depression. We are also facing where income are not increasing because the labor market isn't moving. As the oldest millennials, which is the 1980s, the one that is born in 1980s, early 1980s, they entered into the job market and they are not going anywhere yet. They are not retired. They are still actively in the workforce. Hence, the employers have more power when negotiating wages. That makes the newcomer, the new younger generation, after the 1990s, the 1986, making these people a little bit of going to this career trend. They cannot ask for more money because the workforce is full of the early millennials, which is the 30 plus up to the 40 plus. There's still a lot of them in the market. So they are nowhere near retirement, Yeah. So what are the trends now that's going on in the millennials' life? Is like because of the earlier problem where there's still a lot of workforce in the market where the mobility is not moving, not transferring over. So those people that come in, right, they are expected to affect them the initial low earnings. All right, those that just started working, you don't expect like you can get high income. The raises are pretty low nowadays. Like how many industry can give you 6 months bonus, 1 year bonus? Even 3 months is like close to impossible. New millennial, they are actually lesser able to save and invest, right? So this is the early years of their life. Then the reality is actually they have a lot of debts they need to pay, especially those that is in the US.
Are you saying like those education loans? Because in US, it's actually very common for most of them to take on the education loan because their parents don't prepare for them.
Yeah. So this is basically their kind of debts, the education loan. Malaysian kids are a little bit more fortunate because a lot of the Asian parents, they include the education funds into the parents' responsibility. A lot of Asian parents would say that, my responsibility is
poor.
My responsibility is up to your university. But some parents from a lot of the Western parents, the Westerners, their responsibility is up to your high school. So
ask yourself this question: after you started working, what have your parents sponsored you further? Is it a home? Is it a house? Is it a car? Or is it further living expenses because your first pay isn't very high?
Then we are also labeled as materialistic, spoiled, and saddled with a sense of entitlement. Is it true?
When they see that their friends have this, they also ask their parents for this. Are you saying this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of thinking about our generation, a lot of parents has said they are part of their parents' saving, part of their parents' expenditure. So parents must pay. Parents ought to pay. It's their responsibility to pay. I remember those were the days where baby G is really, really very trendy.
Baby G were during our uni time, probably, is it?
No, for me, it's during my 13, 14 years old. My first baby G I think I was 13 of 12. I can't remember. I got it because my mom wanted me to admit to the hospital because I was not feeling well. And to coax me, I think she bought me a baby G.
Oh my God, what a spoiled kid you are. No, I
didn't ask for it per se, but that is the way. That's why it says
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It go both ways.
sense. It's kind of like a sense of entitlement, I suppose. That if that is what you we think
But
is a
I
sense of
mean, to
entitlement.
get hospitalized to entitled for a baby G watch, we wouldn't want it now, of course. But because since we already experienced it, okay, why not just take it?
Yeah. So then the next one will be the goal. What about the goal for the millennials trend? Is like they're not able to achieve life goal, as in not so easily like our parents or grandparents. It's because first, our wants is become more wow than them. It's also because of that as well. And also it's such as finding their dream job, buying a house or retiring until much later in their life than previous generation did. Yeah, it's not so easy to buy houses or this thing anymore, right? So let's go inner and have a talk about more of that. The first thing is let's have a look at their living expenses. You can relate back to yourself because if you're a millennial, you're born in the millennial, you can relate back to yourself, all right? Most popular personal finance priority now, the popular ones are to have enough money for day-to-day living expenses. Perhaps not for you, Chanel, and myself, but generally speaking, is it true that it's just day-to-day living expenses is their priority now?
I think no. Buying the next new iPhone is probably the priority these days, right?
Oh yeah,
Right.
I
And I
think
think people
yeah.
work backwards this day, like, okay, I want to buy a new iPhone next month when it's actually launching. So I'm actually
Mm.
counting backwards. How much can I live on my food next month? So I think
Ah,
things have changed. I
mm,
really have a client who will change every 6 months, whenever Apple launches a new phone. So to him is
mm.
because to him is I just need to lose a few thousand every time I trade in the old one to get a new one.
Oh,
And yeah, so to him it's already a fixed cost every few months because he's a hard fan of Apple. So I guess the priority these days are actually quite luxurious for millennials as well.
generally speaking, lah, like Malaysian, and because it's harder for us to get an iPhone compared to our neighboring country like Singapore, because even though they earn like 2-3 thousand, almost like us, but because their cost of living is much way lower than us slightly, for them to get an iPhone because of their currency as well, is way easier than us because our currency is so low, already income so low, currency is also so low. So to get an iPhone is actually pretty difficult for us. Then also these people are facing a sluggish job market and also postpone working in favor of getting higher education because they know that even though I work now, I don't get much. Might as well I go and study. That kind of mentality. And also a lot of them also make do with a part-time position or some gigs, to receive some extra income as well. So these are some of the trend that's going on for living expenses as well. During my time when we graduate, it's like houses is like 200,000-300,000. We only need to pay like 1,600 per month. Compared to currently, houses are like at 500 minimum to start off with. 600 to start off, 400 to start off with, which your installment will rack up to like 2-3 thousand a month. Yeah, so being independent is really difficult now. So being free from the financial support from the parents doesn't make it easier, for a lot of millennials, which is living paycheck to paycheck. So a lot of them they're still living with their parents, and to
Even
accumulate.
even living with parents, right, is still quite tough to a lot of them.
Yeah. So accumulating wealth isn't just about cutting expenses alone. A lot of them like say that, oh, I don't drink Starbucks. I can. Yeah, of course, reducing this kind of unnecessary expenses can help you to save a little money. But talking about accumulating wealth, right? It actually requires a longer planning and longer thinking as well. So focusing less on being stingy and but rather move more broadening your earning capacity, like what me and Chanel things always advocate. What we all must do is like doing more extra, building your pipelines and stuff like that. Continue to go for a lot of education to learn things that you need to, and also your work experience, for example, can increase the worth of your income. So these are the things that in order for you to be financially independent, it's a thing that you need to do, is to really to increase, your education and all these things. It's a must now. So what about getting out of debt for these millennials? A lot of them are struggling, but then again, there's also you can leverage on it, like what the green color bubble there. And debt is not all that bad after all. So let's have a look at what is it all about, okay? Talking about struggling, because there's a lot of paying off debts has become increasingly difficult because of the low income that we are talking earlier, and there's some people don't even get a job now, you know. But for many who are struggling with unemployment and low paying job, like what I mentioned, and paying bills like credit card on time is very crucial to building a credit rating, and also not eat into the high interest rate. So people are struggling to do this kind to pay off their debts. But then you can also leverage. For example, when you need to take a loan to buy a car, even though you have the cash, you ought to take a loan. Like even though you have, for example, money to get to buy a house, it's advisable to actually get a loan, so that what happens is like you have extra money. You take a longer loan and you have extra money to build your retirement nest, not to spend, but to also think about the retirement side, to build a retirement nest. You can leverage on the funds when compounding interest is most in your favor. Everyone will regret when they're 20 years old and they do not save that much or keep on spending, because as the old saying goes, the younger you are, the compounding interest is way better at your benefit, you know, because of the year. And another part of it getting said is like debt is not that bad after all. Like what Chanel always says, debt is not that bad. You still need a little bit of debt in the company. And so she always says that, you know. So more favorable interest rate, because they see you pay very well. And once you pay very well, you will definitely get calls from the banks to ask you to give you a better rate and stuff like that, right? So taking a loan for house or higher purchase allows you to have more cash remains available to put forward something else, like what I said just now. Getting a loan, right, allows you to actually extra money to invest and build your retirement nest. So we're talking about debts, and let's go what's next. So what about millennials saving for big purchases? Unfortunately, this is not very a dream come true for many millennials. Lenders are imposing stricter guidelines for major type of financing, such as mortgage finance. It's very hard to get mortgages, especially after the bubble, the subprime. I think a lot of banks are actually tightening as well. Millennials need to be able to make a substantial down payment if they want to purchase a home. But I think in Malaysia, Chanel, I think this is kind of like, if you can prove your income, I think it's okay, right? What do you think now, Chanel, for housing?
That's why a lot of the younger people will opt for projects. Like they promise you 3 years or 4 years down the road, you will get your house, zero down payment, things like that. But just a little note for everyone who's actually planning, or you have already bought a project. Actually, project properties are actually based on future value. So even though they are telling you that, oh, it's actually a zero down payment, actually they have already factored in all those. In fact,
Exactly.
if they're telling you it's a 600,000 it's a 600,000 value on S&P, but zero down payment. Now, do bear in mind that actually the actual cost of it could be only like 500,000. I mean, why would people want to sell you a 600,000 thing at a loss? The true fact is, 4 years later, right, when you're getting your key, it may not be even be able to be sold at 600,000. This is
Agree,
what is
totally
actually
agree.
happening. So we got to be careful. Yeah. So I
just,
think we are kind of in dilemma. Like we want sub sale, but sub sale, how many people can afford due to the down payment and the legal fee, the
sales,
stamp duty?
there's too many fees to pay. But then again, the prime area, already the land is so limited.
Millions.
Yeah, and of course you want to stay back at the prime area, but the first thing first, there isn't any new development. Even there are, as what Chanel said, is future value, and you want to buy sub sales, right? There's a lot of fees to fork out, really, like such as down payment is more, all the stamp duties and etc. etc. So, and unless you can get a very very good buy, okay. So the next is bank these days might be a safe place to store your cash, but it's not necessarily the smartest place to put it. So of course, bank is a place to keep a small emergency fund. After all, it is a PIDM insured, but the bulk of your savings should be elsewhere. What is PIDM? PIDM is Deposit Insurance Malaysia, but I don't think they kind of promise a lot of money. So a lot of people, they actually have a lot of banks because they know PIDF only insure a certain amount for each of your accounts. So there you go.